The oldest of the 7 sages of the Bamboo Grove was Shan Tao. When he first joined the group, he was already 43. Shan Tao was also known as Zhu Yuan and was a native of Wuzhi in Henan province. The history of the Jin dynasty describes him as a hermit and Taoist. In the 5th century collection of short stories called the Shi Shuo Xin Yu, or New Account of Tales of the World, it is said of Shan Tao he never read Lao Tzu or Zhuangzi. However, when people discussed them, he found that he agreed with all that they said.
以上的2种说法呀，似乎互相矛盾，但实际上呢，可能并不矛盾。因为啊，魏晋时代的玄风盛行，老庄思想啊影响很大，文人士大夫呢多以清谈老庄啊自居。山涛呢，他受时代学风的影响，有时候啊也会做老庄之清谈，这大概啊就给了人们呢信号老庄的这个印象。
Shan Tao considered it an honor when he made the acquaintance of the scholars Ji Kang and Ruan Ji. To his wife, he said admiringly that only 2 such men could be his true friends.
嵇康和阮籍啊，早已声闻遐迩。山涛的妻子呢，很想亲眼目睹一下他们的风采。山涛啊，于是找了一个机会，把阮籍和嵇康啊请到了家中，并把他们呢留宿在家，准备了酒菜招待。他的妻子呢，在墙上啊穿了一个洞观看，看得入了神，直到天明以后啊，都忘了离开。
According to New Account of Tales of the World, his wife afterwards told Shan Tao, "They are far wiser than you. You must be magnanimous if you want to make them your friends." Shan Tao agreed, but he had no particular interest in the Taoism preached by Lao Tzu and Zhuangzi. He only paid lip service to it in order to ingratiate himself with the group in the Bamboo Grove. According to the history of the Jin dynasty, in the early years of their marriage, Shan Tao and his wife were very poor. His wife would often complain, and Shan Tao would urge her to be patient. "One day, I will become a high official," he told her, "and then you will enjoy all the advantages." Shan Tao was related to the influential Sima family. Uncertain who would gain the upper hand in the rivalry between the Sima faction and the powerful Cao family, Shan Tao fled the capital and sought refuge in the Bamboo Grove. The fact was, Shan Tao still harboured ambitions of a career at court, and flight seemed to him the most expedient choice of action. Xiang Xiu, another of the 7 sages of the Bamboo Grove, was from the same county as Shan Tao. Xiang Xiu, who was also known as Ziqi, was a fine poet who annotated the philosophical text called Zhuangzi. According to the history of the Jin dynasty, the Zhuangzi was a source of considerable controversy among scholars who offered numerous different interpretations of its writings. Xiang Xiu annotated the text with a view to ending the controversy. He also wrote a series of articles which generated renewed interest in Taoism.
向秀在文章中把人的欲望归结为自然之理，应当得到满足，但他也反对过分的放纵，主张以理加以约束。
Among the 7 sages of the Bamboo Grove, one was a noted drinker. His name was Liu Ling. Liu Ling also went by the name Bo Luan. A native of Anhui, he was a Taoist. By nature broad-minded and humorous, he was unconventional in his behavior and attitudes. The history of the Jin dynasty describes Liu Ling as short, just 1.45 meters tall. His appearance was unattractive, and he was overly fond of wine. In fact, stories of his drinking exploits are still told today. Liu Ling was a taciturn man. He had few friends and showed little interest in what was happening around him. However, in Ruanji and Jikang, Liu Ling found two men he liked, so he decided to join them at their meetings in the bamboo grove. The youngest of the 7 sages of the bamboo grove was Wang Rong, who was only 15 when he first joined the group. Wang Rong, who also went by the name Juanchong, was a native of Lini in Shandong province.
临沂王氏是有名望的大族，王戎的祖父王雄担任过幽州刺史，也就是幽州的最高地方长官。王戎的父亲王浑在曹魏时期做过尚书郎、凉州刺史，后来被封为镇陵亭侯。
In the history of the Jin dynasty, Wang Rong is described as a young man who was wise and clever. The story goes that one day when Wang Rong and some other children were playing by the roadside, they saw a plum tree laden with fruit.
其他的孩子都争先恐后的去摘李子，王戎站在一边动也不动。别的孩子问他为什么不去摘李子，王戎很有把握地说：“李子树长在路边，却结满了果子，一定是苦李子，所以才没有人吃。”别的孩子摘下来一尝，果然如此，大家都佩服王戎很聪明。
Henceforth, Wang Rong was known as a child genius. And the history of the Jin dynasty relates another story about Wang Rong. Tao Rui, who as Emperor Mingdi ruled the Tao Wei Empire, kept a tiger locked in an enclosed yard in his capital city, Luoyang.
他让人传出消息，说要让猛士拔去老虎的爪牙，并准许全城的百姓来观看。消息传出以后前来看热闹的人把宣武场围得密不透风。
Among them was Wang Rong, who was just 7 years old. One man succeeded in removing the tiger's teeth. The animal, roaring with pain, threw itself violently against the fence in a desperate bid to escape. The spectators were terrified. Some fled, while others collapsed in fright. The yard was in chaos. Wang Rong, however, remained unmoved, calmly enjoying the spectacle. The emperor, seeing Wang Rong from his rostrum, was amazed. He ordered his officials to find out who this remarkable boy was. And so Wang Rong became famous for his courage and calmness.
A bamboo grove offered them a refuge from the intrigues at court. Taoist philosophy and music and wine offered them an escape from the rigid social conventions prescribed by Confucius. But try as they might, the 7 sages of the bamboo grove couldn't always remain immune to events in the outside world.
It was on the recommendation of Ruanji that Wang Rong joined the group in the bamboo grove. When he had been a court official, Ruanji had heard about a fellow official named Wang Huan, who had a son who was widely believed to be exceptionally talented. The story goes that one day when Ruanji visited Wang Huan at his home, he saw Wang Rong playing chess with his father. Ruanji watched them playing. Wang Huan, because he had something to discuss with Ruanji, was distracted. As a result, Wang Hun made a false move. He wanted to retract it, and his son didn't stop him. He said casually, "You're indecisive. Clearly your mind is on something else." Ruanji was impressed that someone so young could understand his father's thoughts. Afterwards, Ruanji became a regular visitor to Wang Hun's home, but he would only ever spend a short time with the father. With Wang Rong, he would sometimes pass a whole day talking. Ruanji was some 20 years Wang Rong's senior. That they spent so much time in each other's company is a clear sign of Wang Rong's precocious intelligence. However, soon after Wang Rong joined the group in the bamboo grove, Ruanji began to be irritated by him and to find fault with him. One day, Jikang, Ruanji and Liu Ling were having a drink in the bamboo grove. Wang Rong, however, was very late. When Wang Rong finally arrived, Ruanji said sarcastically, "Such a worldly guy, you must be very disappointed by us." To which Wang Rong responded with a smile, "Who else could be disappointed by such people as you?" And so 7 men from different family backgrounds and with different careers and life stories found refuge from the political turmoil in a quiet bamboo grove.
聚会的竹林它的目的并不在于饮酒和谈玄，真正的目的就在于实现一种人生的逍遥。也就是说，实践庄子所阐释的逍遥游理想。
The 7 sages were also musicians, and the air around Baijia Cliff was filled with the music of their instruments. However, the relative tranquility did not last long. In January 249, an incident took place in Luoyang that would change the fate of the 7 sages of the bamboo grove. According to historical records, soon after the Chinese New Year of the year 249, the young Emperor Cao Fang left his capital in Luoyang en route for Gaoping Mausoleum. There, he intended to sweep the grave of his father Cao Rui, who had reigned as Emperor Mingdi of Tao Wei. The emperor was accompanied by Supreme General Tao Shuang and his brothers. Before their departure, Tao Shuang was urged to leave one of his brothers behind to guard the capital, but Tao Shuang rejected the suggestion. No sooner had Tao Shuang left Luoyang than his great political rival Sima Yi put a plan into action that he had been working on for a long time. He had been pretending to be ill, but now he led his army to the Tao Wei capital at Luoyang. He seized all the key strategic points, barred the city gates, and destroyed the bridge over the river Luoshui. Thus, he effectively prevented Tao Shuang from returning to the city. Tao Shuang, his key aides and their families were eventually captured by Sima Yi and executed. The Sima faction had gained a decisive upper hand over the Cao family.
高平陵之变呢，司马懿一举诛灭了曹爽，开始大开杀戒，前后杀人呢就有数千之多，以致造成了民事减半、天下震动的恐怖局面。这无疑对当时世人的心理造成了极大的压力。
In the wake of the Gaoping Mausoleum coup, real power in Cao Wei rested with the Sima family. Sima Yi was an astute man, and he realized that he couldn't sustain himself in power without the support of the country's scholars. So Sima Yi began feting prominent scholars who had not been close to Cao Shuang. Among them was Ruanji, one of the 7 sages of the Bamboo Grove.
司马懿为了扩大自己的势力，对当时的士人采取了威胁、拉拢、引诱的策略。嵇康的名声并不比阮籍低，可能是因为他与曹氏有姻亲的关系，所以当时司马氏没有打他的主意。
Sima Yi saw Ruanji as a man with a famous grandfather and father who was a renowned scholar in his own right. He was someone who discussed Taoist philosophy, played music, and wrote poetry with his companions in the Bamboo Grove on Mount Yuantai. Sima Yi considered Ruanji's literary accomplishments to be even greater than those of his celebrated father, Ruan Yu. To Sima Yi, however, Ruanji had one even more important attribute. He had refused to serve under Cao Shuang. Therefore, Sima Yi, convinced that Ruanji didn't support the Cao group, set out to woo him. And so, at the age of 40, Ruanji was forced to leave the Bamboo Grove and become an official under Sima Yi. But, unhappy in his new position, Ruanji chose to keep a low profile.
对于一个普通的知识分子来讲，阮籍是很难抵抗得住司马氏集团的强大的政治压力的。如果拒绝合作，那就被杀头的可能。那么怎么办呢？只有出来做官。出来做，心里不想做，又不能不做。只有做官不问事情，所以把朝廷、官场当作隐居的地方，即所谓朝隐。
A bamboo grove offered them a refuge from the intrigues at court. Taoist philosophy and music and wine offer them an escape from the rigid social conventions prescribed by Confucius. But try as they might, the 7 sages of the Bamboo Grove couldn't always remain immune to events in the outside world.
In August of the year 251, at the age of 73, Sima Yi died of illness. He was replaced as an aide to the emperor by Sima Shi, his eldest son. Ruanji became a secretary to Sima Shi. With the power of the Sima family growing rapidly, it became common knowledge that they intended to take over the government of Cao Wei. And in 254, Sima Shi deposed Cao Fang after the emperor tried to strip him of his power. In his place, he put his cousin Cao Mao on the throne.
司马氏为什么要废掉曹芳呢？因为当时曹芳继位10多年了，但是形同虚设，朝中的政事都由司马氏兄弟决定。一想到这里，曹芳常常痛哭流涕。于是他就召集亲信大臣密谋除掉司马氏，不料事情败露，曹芳被废，参与谋划的人都惨遭杀害。
After Cao Mao was sent to the throne, Sima Shi promoted a large number of his own cronies to key positions. The history of the Jin dynasty relates that Ruanji was made Marquis of Guannei and an imperial councillor. By this time, Ruanji knew full well how vicious and treacherous Sima Shi was. He knew he must act with extreme caution in all his dealings at court. According to the history of the Jin dynasty, Zhong Hui, a trusted aide to the Sima family, regularly visited Ruanji. Ostensibly, he would seek his opinion on the prevailing political situation, but in fact, he was hoping to gather evidence that incriminated Ruanji. Ruanji knew full well what Zhong Hui was trying to do, so in their conversations, he only talked about philosophy or pretended to be drunk. In this way, he escaped political persecution. Sima Zhao was Sima Shi's younger brother. In 255, after Sima Shi died of illness, Sima Zhao became Supreme General and de facto head of state. In the same year, Ruanji submitted a request to Sima Zhao asking to be posted outside the capital. He told Sima Zhao he would like to be the governor of Dongping in Shandong province, as it was a place he was very fond of. Sima Zhao accepted his request, and Ruanji set off for Dongping on his donkey.
阮籍啊，到东平以后不久，就下了一道命令，让把衙门中呢所有的壁障，大约呢就是照壁、隐蔽之类的设施啊，通通的拆掉，以便使内外相望，法令清简。
This done, Ruanji headed straight back to Luoyang. He had spent only 10 days in Dongping. The great Tang Dynasty poet Li Bai wrote a poem praising Ruanji for his actions in Dongping. Other scholars also expressed their admiration for him, hailing him as the first champion of open government in Chinese history.
阮籍拆墙，根本就不是我们现在所说的办公透明化，因为他根本就不办公。他之所以这么做，主要是基于他的清简自然的思想，这个思想是道家思想。
In fact, Ruanji wasn't as fond of Dongping as he'd led Sima Zhao to believe. In an article he wrote called Ode to Dongping, he was quite critical of the place. In one passage, he commented, "The land is left uncultivated, and forestry has yet to make progress. It has to improve its farmland and harness and clean its rivers." So, what was Ruanji's reason for seeking to be appointed governor of Dongping?
原来阮籍担任从事中郎的职务时，按照汉魏的官制或者惯例，他只属于司马氏，政治上并不对皇帝负责和发生关系。但他后来做了散骑常侍，这个职务是皇帝的侍从散官。
So, politically, Ruanji was directly connected to the emperor. However, in this new position, Ruanji found himself in opposition to Sima Zhao. This put Ruanji's life in danger. It explains why he wanted to go to Dongping. There, he would remain outside any political infighting. As for Sima Zhao, he was concerned that Ruanji's loyalties might lie with the former emperor, so he welcomed Ruanji's request to serve as governor of Dongping. According to the history of the Jin dynasty, when he saw Ruanji return from Dongping, Sima Zhao was delighted, and he made Ruanji his secretary again.
In mid-3rd century, the Taoist beliefs were very much at odds with the rigid strictures of Confucian etiquette that prevailed at court. So, what was their secret to surviving the potentially deadly political intrigues? the story of the 7 sages of the bamboo grove continues.